Augustine says something like this in the Confessions where he talks about, we eat something salty and then you drink something and it's like you're continually building up a desire in order to satisfy it.
Yeah.
But in heaven, apparently, we won't have any desires.
We won't have any unrealized
desires. In the sense that they'll all
desires.
be realized immediately. Doesn't that seem like a lack? Like I want it to be a hot day and I want a cold beer. But in heaven, there will be no desire unmet. So I can't do that. And that sounds kind of boring.
So if we take...
Do you see the point I'm making?
I do.
Okay.
The sense is that in order to be truly satisfied, you need to have the experience of desire. You need to have
Well, that's a tremendous pleasure in life.
There's a tremendous pleasure in satisfying something that was previously unfulfilled.
Well done. You summed it up in 3 words, 5 words. I said 20 sentences.
No, it's good. So I think that basically heaven will be like that for the entirety of your life. So the entirety of your life is one big desire, and heaven is the realization of that desire that never grows old. So think about this. In heaven, please God, when we get back our bodies in the resurrection, there will still be marks of your earthly existence. It's like why we portray the martyrs with the engines of their martyrdom, and it's why Christ came bearing his wounds. Because the resurrection is not a denial of what has gone before, it's a transfiguration of what has gone before. So in heaven, when we have the loving vision of God, please Lord, right? It will be as the fruit of a life's worth of longing, right? And that longing will be brought to bear on the object of our heart's love. So C.S. Lewis says, when you die and you look back at your days, you will recognize them. For those who have ended up in hell, you will recognize them as hell on earth. For those who end in heaven, you will recognize them as heaven on earth. So truth be told, we are already living heaven now. We are already living heaven now because grace gives way to glory. There's nothing specifically different between grace and glory, except that in glory, you can't lose it, right? It can't diminish, right? There's no fear of instability. So what we are experiencing now is already a foretaste of heaven. And incidentally, tangentially, that's the whole point of religious life, is to orient the Christian gaze towards heaven, right? Where we will neither be married nor given in marriage, but we will all be wed to the Lord. So I think that the satisfaction of heaven will retain the dynamism and the history of your going there. So for the same reason that Jesus is recognized not so much by his face after his resurrection as by his wounds, so too we will be recognized by our desires, what impelled us to the vision, what actually drew us there. So in that same book that I mentioned, The Quiet Light, which describes the life of St. Thomas Aquinas, one of his sisters asks him, St. Thomas, how do I become holy? How do I become a saint? To which he is said to have responded, desire it, right? Because desire is the antecedent to the consequent of enjoyment, right? But it's still present. Desire is just love in motion, and rest, enjoyment, is just love realized. But they both give expression to the same phenomenon, which is the recognition of something as addressed to me, as for me, as perfect for me, but that calls me up and into it. So in heaven, there won't be this kind of selfish assimilation of the beatific vision where I parcel it off and keep it for myself and keep it away from all the other saints for fear of it diminishing. It's the kind of good that we don't so much possess as are possessed by it. And it's a common good, which means that it doesn't diminish when it's shared by many. It actually grows. So we're called up into it, and they're you can think about C.S. Lewis's description in The Last Battle, further up and further in. It is a house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. So there are constantly new vistas, not in the sense that we'll be growing in charity, but that we'll be discovering more and more of God. Yeah, so I think it will retain that dynamism.
That's beautiful, beautifully put. That's what I was going to ask you, because how we love on earth will result in our ability to enjoy God forever and all eternity. And I think it was Teresa of Avila who said, all will be sufficiently full, but some will be kind of a larger vessel than others. So the Blessed Mother will be an ocean, Mother Teresa a swimming pool, I'll be a thimble, if that. And yet we'll all be full. But is this a way to look at it where will our vessel be continually growing throughout all eternity so as to receive more, or no?
I don't think so. In the sense that the degree of charity that you merited in life is the principle of your enjoyment of the beatific vision, and you cease meriting at the moment of death. So when the body and soul separate, you cease to merit. So that's also what gives such dramatic import to this life, because there's a kind of timelessness both to purgatory and to heaven. We participate the eternity of God in a far more awesome and peculiar way. So right now, we are living this life of time. It's proper to us as humans to be time-bound. And so everything is filled with purpose, filled with drama, because we are proceeding on the way towards the vision of God. And everything tells for or against that glorious strain. So, no, we won't continue to increase.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there will still be a dynamism. But how blows our minds.
Dynamism, what does that mean then?
There's there's a kind of movement in the sense that so St. Thomas says that the perfection of charity is present, in the habit, so when you grow in the habit of charity, the virtue, but he says it's most perfectly present in the actual act. So when you are loving, that's where you are most charitable. That's what's most particularly excellent about the human creature. So we are going to be loving in a fully actualized way. We won't just be capable of knowing God and of loving God. We won't just have developed virtues for knowing and loving God. We will actually be knowing and loving God to the fullest extent which we ourselves are capable of at that juncture. So we'll be firing on all cylinders. We will be, in a certain sense too, I love to think about it in terms of our history. We'll be singing the song of how Christ has saved us. Because it said, St. Paul talks often about how we fill up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ, or that we kind of bring to birth, in labor pains, the grace of God at work within us. So there's a sense in which the redemption is incomplete until it's complete in you or in me. And that's what our earthly lives are for, is for Christ to tell his story in us in a unique and beautiful way. There are certain things about God that only we can tell by our vocations, right? There are certain notes in the heavenly choirs that only our voice can supply. And so we will sing of God's glory in a way that only we can, or only I can, or you can. And we'll go on telling the story of how the grace of God was at work in our life. And that's awesome. And people will be able to see it because our flesh will give expression to it in perfect fashion. Like when St. John Paul II talks about the nuptial meaning of the body, our bodies, our resurrected bodies, will give perfect expression to the love, the desire, the enjoyment of our souls in a way that is concretely you. So in that, I think there's still dynamism because it's actualized. It's yeah.
That's literally the most beautiful explanation of heaven I've ever heard.
Dang.
Thank you.
Dude.
Yo, thanks for watching. You can watch the entire episode on YouTube if you want. You can listen to it at The Matt Fradd Show by subscribing on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And feel free to support me, patreon.com/MattFradd.